Hi.
Short Bus Debate Club. It's a bus rolling.
I can get on board. Hello, I'm Darren Jolly.
It's time to get this short bus started. So let's roll and on with the show. Happy Monday, people. I hope you have your bus fare ready because it's time to get the short bus rolling. This happy Monday, we are talking about prostitution. And we're going to talk about a little bit about the history of it, where we are now with prostitution and kind of give you our idea of the good, the bad, and the ugly and our opinions on it and all of those instances, I guess. As always, Darren Jolly is across the table from me.
Hi.
So I actually just fucked up a minute ago, and we did almost like 8 minutes worth of this, and
Take two.
turns out that it wasn't recording at all. So I'm going to send it over to Darren, and he can repeat everything that he did just moments ago.
Well, I would say that my attitude towards sex workers and prostitution and whatnot has changed dramatically over the course of my life. I grew up when I was young as a Mormon, and Mormons are very puritanical, and you're not even allowed to think about, I don't even think they're really allowed to think about sex as fun, you got to wear the special underwear and all that shit. But having said that, through some experiences that I had, I working up in Blackhawk, going and dealing poker on the road in Delta Tournament in Costa Rica and Dominican Republic, where sex work is very common, and it's out in the open in both places. With the interactions that I had with those people, through those journeys, kind of opened my eyes up to see that no matter what you think of it, it's a lot more complicated. And sometimes in the U.S. we think about it a certain way because we've been bound to a certain covenant, for so long. But the realities in other places, especially where you got a lot of people from the U.S. traveling to, are very, very different.
Well, and I'm pretty sure that most of Europe, both Eastern and Western Europe, prostitution is legal. I know that in a lot of different parts of Asia, prostitution is legal.
When I was in Chengdu, man, boy, it was right in your face. That's Western China.
So it's definitely, legal in other parts of the globe. I don't know what the deal is with the United States, why we think that we have to somehow tie everything to religion and pretend like we're fighting the good fight for whomever, right? We're sticking up for all of these prostitutes, and that's why it's illegal, is because these women have been forced into that career. I know that that's the truth in a lot of cases. I mean, human trafficking is a real danger. It's a threat in the United States and elsewhere. But that doesn't mean that all women who are prostitutes or all men who are prostitutes were trafficked in or forced to do that. I think that they've made that choice for whatever reason on their own in a lot of instances.
Can I give an example? So I'm not going to tell the Maria toothbrush story. We'll save that for another day. But when I was in the Dominican Republic, there was a prostitute that frequently, so like we all stayed in flats, right? And 3 guys stayed in the flats that was right across from where we were at. And there was a prostitute named Maria that frequented some of my coworkers, fellow dealers who were on the road with us, their flat. She went to their flat 3 nights in a row. She got herself a 3-bagger. And because I was sort of like a naive liberal idiot, the 4th night that she was there, everybody else, they went down to the church. They called it the church. That's the brothel, right? Because they were looking for some other scratch. That was what their game was that night. But our friend Mike, who was staying there, we were over there drinking with him, and some things happened. Oddly enough, this was actually the day that they voted for president, and everything was closed in all the Dominican Republic except for the casino where we were dealing the poker tournament at. It was the finals that night. But having said that, uh, after some things transpired, we were sitting there and we were having a beer, and I just sort of felt like she had been so objectified. I wanted to kind of turn her back into a human being for other people. And this is one of those. That's a really stupid thing for me to think, but that's an American, liberal sentiment. But having said that, I asked her. I said, "You vote today?" And she said, "Yeah, everybody votes." And I said, "Can I ask you a question candidly?" And she sort of looked at me
because she didn't know
what candidly meant. Yeah. So I just want to be straightforward. I said, "How do you feel about what you do?" And she says, "Look, you need to understand one thing." She says, "I have an apartment that I pay for that I live in by myself." She said, "I have a DVD player. I have a TV. I have they all had these little scooters that they would drive around." She said, I have one of those. I have a lot of freedom that I would not have otherwise if it weren't for that. So that's how I feel about it. And that was just a fucking big slap across my face. And it was just an eye-opening kind of thing. This is not something that anybody had. And again, like Brian said, there's no doubt there are things that cause or allow for these sort of vacuous spaces where these horrible things happen. I mean, in the Middle East and like all over the place, to be perfectly honest with you. But having said that, it's not just a black or white thing. There are many shades of gray when you're dealing with questions of sex workers. So,
yeah, but I mean, to make it illegal because we're trying to protect somebody is just fucking stupid. I mean, honestly, and really, what it's doing is it's probably putting a lot of those people that we're supposed to be trying to protect in danger. Because, since everything's done in that black market space, now, they have more of a chance to get raped. They have more of a chance to get beaten. They have more of a chance to have an STD and to pass that on to whoever just paid them. There's so much shit that can happen because it's not legal and it's not regulated. You and I talked about it. It's just like the drugs thing, except instead of making a batch of crystal meth and blowing your apartment up, you're gonna get fucking HIV and give it to 50 people.
You mentioned something important in take one, but I think you should definitely go back to that, the change in Colorado law this last year.
Yeah, well, I mean, you could have said it since you just kind of did, but so earlier this year, and I think similar legislation has been passed in different states throughout the country, but here in Colorado, we just passed legislation to sort of help with the issue that I just mentioned. So basically, a lot of prostitutes never used to report crimes. So if they were mugged or robbed, if they were raped, if they were beaten up, if any of these things happened, they wouldn't report it because they knew that the first thing that would happen is the cops would find out that they were a prostitute and then charge them as a prostitute and probably not investigate the other fucking crime at all. Well, now it's on the books, it's gone through, and it's passed. So if a prostitute does report a crime, they will not be charged as a prostitute because of reporting that crime. If they get busted the next day or whatever, they can still get in trouble for being, for selling sex, but not because they reported the crime.
Which at least opens the door to the concept of regulation. Another place that I went to when I dealt the poker tournament was in Costa Rica. And Costa Rica is like the market for sex is gigantic. I mean, there's and for every flavor, right? Straight, bi, trans. I mean, it's all there. And when I got off the plane, they had a big uh, billboard that said, "If you're coming here to look for sex with somebody that's underage, we're going to lock you away and throw away the key." So they make this point right there. They know that it's there. The people that practice sex work. So there's two really big brothels down there, the Del Mar and the Del Rey. They're right next to each other. Um, when the workers go in, they clock in, and it's not like a time clock. It's just sort of like I'm in the activity of trying to engage in this business, right? And the sex workers, at least during 2007 or 2008 when I was down there, they were required to get tested twice a month, and this was something that they had put a lot of thought into, and that there's something about that. Like Brian has suggested, when you take something out of that dark corner and you bring it out into the open, and you create a space to where there's honesty and there's a possibility for people who are engaging it to be protected from those darker undersides.
It's important shit to have. And the hookers that work the different ranches in Nevada, they are also required to be tested. And they don't have to worry about being mugged or I guess they could still be raped, but they're within the confines of that business, that brothel. So something that's
they're
happening
out in the middle of nowhere too. So if somebody tried to pull some shit,
yeah, they might end up being buried in a hole if they did. But yeah, so, and that's the only state where prostitution is legal, and it's not legal within different cities, and that's something. So
it's totally cuckoo.
When we talk about the history of prostitution here in the United States, anyway, so obviously, in the Old West, prostitution was legal, and even after what a lot of people would call the Old West. So some important dots on the timeline. 1908, the Bureau of Investigation was founded. In 1910, the Mann Act was passed, and that's man, MANN, not man like man. So the Mann Act was basically, another name for it was the White Slavery Act. And basically it said that transporting women across state lines for the purposes of sex was against the law. Now, that was the first law federally that basically kind of started putting the kibosh on prostitution. But because of the way the Constitution reads and the different amendments and codes and all of that stuff, sex could not be criminalized at the federal level. So the Mann Act was the first step, but each individual state, and even more, each individual city and county had to make their own decision on what they were going to do with prostitution, which is why in Nevada, you've got all of these counties outside of Clark, which Clark County is where Vegas is, outside of Clark County where prostitution is legal, and in Clark County it's not.
So fucking weird, dude.
in Denver, for example, the Denver Police and Fire Board abolished prostitution in 1913. So it was really kind of weird. Like between 1910, when the Mann Act was passed, and 1920, the majority of those cities and counties got rid of prostitution. There were huge, I don't know what to call it really. I mean, but it was just activism all against prostitution.
So it
But
became a political issue, you're suggesting, during that time period where everybody wanted to make it illegal?
absolutely. And I don't know why. Again, 1908, Bureau of Investigation, 1910, Mann Act, and then 1913 in Denver, it was illegal. 1917 in San Francisco, it became illegal.
1910 Seattle, yeah. A bunch of, yeah.
So, I mean, it just started kind of snowballing from 1910 after the Mann Act. And it's been illegal ever since. Making housewives and girlfriends across the United States just feel so safe and secure knowing that their men are not cheating. Here's some kind of amusing shit that I found. Well, amusing maybe. That depends. But cool for sure. So I always thought the red light district was just because for some reason on TV shows and stuff, I always see women in general, not just hookers, but they put some sort of like scarf or something over the lamp on the side of the bed, and it kind of creates this reddish glow.
Ambiance, yeah.
So I kind of thought that maybe hookers or whoever ran the brothel just liked red lights, and the biggest owner of the biggest brothel at whatever time had red lights to advertise, hey, we got hookers over here. Well, that wasn't the case at all. The reason that red light districts started getting that name is because railroad workers carried these fucking lanterns that had a blinking red light on them. And they would hang them up outside the door of whatever whorehouse they were at or whore they were with, whatever, so that the other railroad workers would know where they were. So the blinking red light and the railroad workers is where the red light district came from.
You don't have to put on the red light. Okay, that's enough of that.
That was a good Eddie Murphy impression, dude.
I've been working on it a lot.
So here's kind of an example of the good and the bad, right? So there was a woman who was one of the biggest madams of the time. So in 1882, there were two papers that were similar to, I don't know, like here in Denver, they call it the Westward. I can't remember what they call it in Phoenix, but they're these newspapers that advertise, like right now, they advertise weed and
music,
sex for sale, and different music and whatever. So in 1882, the Denver Republican, which was a newspaper, reported that the Rustler and the Patrol were two periodicals devoted to immorals and advertising for Cyprians. So that was in 1882. In 1892, there was actually a full guide published called A Reliable Guide to the Pleasure Resorts of Denver. And the reason I mentioned it is because the pleasure resorts of Denver were basically on about 2.5 blocks of this street downtown called Market Street. They also referred to it as Holiday Street because you could go and drink and gamble and have sex with prostitutes. One of the madams who owned a couple of houses on Market Street talked about the girls that worked at her house or houses. And she said that they would make anywhere from $30 to $100 a night. So you got to consider this is in fucking 1892.
That's a lot of scratch, dude.
Right. Now, they would have to pay up to 50% of that back to the house for room and board, but they were still making $30 to $100 a night when every other woman that was working as in a laundry or as a typist, typesetter, I should say, maybe a cook, they were making like $1 a week. So even if you cut that in half, you're still making $15 to $50 a night. So you're fucking rolling fat. A couple of the girls ended up buying their own brothels because of the fact that they did well. Now that's the good. The bad is that at the same time, there were these places called crib joints or crib houses. And essentially, these rooms didn't have room for anything but a bed that was the size of a crib. And so these girls stood in the doorways and tried to get guys to come in to their little crib. Now, those girls made like $6 a night, which still isn't bad, except you still had to pay for your crib. And then because they were paying, well, $6 a night, I need to check that report again because they said that they were only making a dime per time. So that means that if they were making $6 a night, they were fucking 60 dudes a night. That seems like a lot.
No, that's like a bukkake nightmare. So.
Yeah, I don't think that that's right. So $6 a night, maybe it was $6 a week. Either way, that's the bad part, right? So there's these girls on the other side of the street that are getting basically $10 every time they do it, and they're making 10 cents every time they do it.
Well, it's a competitive marketplace, you know?
Yeah, it is. And you got to make sure and have a product for every customer available.
And that was in an unregulated space. So I watched a documentary the other day, and this is more of like the bad, but it's also important to like see from a certain angle that that this is culturally like bound in certain locations, right? So this movie was a documentary about kids that were born in brothels in Calcutta, and like in one instance there was one of these little girls that was it's both boys and girls that they have, but there's one of the kids was a little girl, and her mom worked there, her grandma worked there, and her great grandmother worked there. So she was a fourth generation potential prostitute. And this sort of British Indian gal, she comes in and she's the one that's doing the documentary, and she's trying to get an out for these kids. And the idea is the only out is you got to get them into these schools, and they have to commit to the schools and stay in those schools permanently. Otherwise, like if you go there and you're there for 6 months and then you go back home, c'est la vie, right? And she got like 6 or 7 of them into these schools, but only 2 of them managed to stay out of it. And when that sort of like cultural disposition is like stuck, and you're brought up in that environment, like you're going to be nominally conditioned by possibilities that are in front of your face or at the fringes of what's going on in front of your face. So what that lady was doing was cool, but it's, you know,
that is just so fucked. And I'm sure that kind of thing happens here, you know, I mean, because generally speaking, you know, if you're poor, you kind of end up, I guess, cursed to the life of your parents. And who knows, maybe if you're rich, you end up cursed to the life of your parents too. It's just different because it's an entirely different kind of curse. But you know, like a lot of fathers who ended up in jail, you know, their sons ended up in jail, and so on and so forth. So, I mean, I'm sure that kind of thing happened in the United States too, because a lot of these women who are turning tricks, especially if they don't have like a house or a hotel room or whatever, I think that they might end up turning tricks in their cars. And if they're turning tricks in their cars and they got kids, then, you know, what do you do with the kids when it's 11:30, 12 o'clock at night? Do you give them a plastic bag and tell them to go play? I mean, what go play with that rat? What?
It's not a good situation, and that's the reality that they're going to be conditioned into.
Yes. So now these girls, regardless where India here, it's
Anywhere,
fucked up situation. And in India there is regulation, right?
Well, it did not. I would say so. It's legal, but like I said, there's all.
I know there was the weird no pimping, no pandering, no brothels.
Yeah, and then these people were these were all kids of parents who were in brothels. So it's not legal to have a brothel, but you have a brothel. So like this is where when we would like presumably if we're going to enter into the space where there's meaningful regulation, I would much rather go down the space like Costa Rica than one where you say that it's legal, but you have all these places that make it to where obviously you have to be paying a bunch of people a bunch of kickbacks to turn their head, right?
Well, and that's what I was going to say is it sounds like one of those situations where certain people get away with it and others just don't.
Because you're not paying the tax. Yeah.
Or whatever
it is. Yeah.
Right.
You're not smoking this guy's hog
And that was what I was about to say is, a lot of prostitutes have complained on documentaries that I've seen and stuff where cops are taking freebies because, well,
I'll turn my head.
Blow me and I won't bust you. Fuck me and I won't bust you. Whatever the case is. I think if it were regulated, then that kind of shit disappears too.
You need to remove the position of power from people who are existing in the legal framework. When the people that, whether it's the executives or the magistrates,
Well, at least the enforcement people.
But in both instances, you want to create a legal environment to where they can defend themselves, to where they have a space that's a legal space, to where they can, I can go get my card, my license, and
just to where there's no question.
Yeah.
Because if there's, some weird loophole or some vague, legalese, then again, some people are getting busted and some aren't.
Yeah, that's just we need to. Our legal environment is just such a shite.
Well, I wasn't talking about here. Now I was jumping back to the India thing.
I still think that our legal environment can be like that a lot too.
Oh, it is.
We're not nearly as well. I don't know. That's a different conversation for a different day.
Yes, indeed, it is. And I'm sure we will have that conversation at some point again, because I know we've touched on it a couple of different times. So, you said at the beginning of the show that because you were a Mormon, that your idea of prostitution has changed over time. And I think that mine has to a degree. And what I mean is, so I used to always say I would never go to a prostitute because I'm not going to pay for it. And the fact of the matter is, we all pay for it in one way or the other. Whether it's buying dinner or drinks, which I'm not saying that we're the only ones that do that. I know that women reciprocate on that end too. And believe me, I know women pay for it one way or the other too. But we all pay for it, whether it's financially through, gifts or dinners or whatever, or rent or whatever the case is there, or emotionally having to fucking listen to you fucking whine and cry for hours at a time. I mean,
I love the way that you put yourself in these spaces where there's just not any even like just even a smidgen of sympathy or thought. It's just shit talk.
No, I do have sympathy, and I definitely did, and it wasn't because I necessarily thought I was going to have sex, but I tried to genuinely listen when I thought it was appropriate to do so.
But the way that you just said it there is a little bit different than the way that
well,
you said
right,
it.
but it's because sometimes they repeat the same complaint over and over and over again to where, okay, yeah, Trump's a fucking asshole. There's nothing I can do about it. So how much are you going to complain about Trump? I can't fix Trump. Can't do it. There's nothing I can do, but just all the time. Trump, and other things too. But yeah, I mean,
But that's the nature of relationships all the way, right? I mean,
which is why I said we're all going to pay for it one way or another.
Yeah, we interact. We have our interactions. Sex is a part of interacting when you're in a relationship. Hopefully, presumably. So yeah, there is cost. I mean, to that extent, I still think I do like the residual effects of growing up Mormon. I just don't think that I'm ever going to be able to get out from underneath that entirely.
You and I, before we even talked about having the podcast, you and I talked about that, and we kind of like tiptoed around and didn't really say anything one way or the other. But dude, honestly, I don't think it has jack shit to do with you being a Mormon. I think, and when I say this, I'm not talking about prostitution solely. I'm talking about prostitution while in a relationship. So it doesn't have anything to do with you being a Mormon. You're a good fucking guy, dude. And that doesn't have anything to do with being a Mormon. Because I know some cock-sucking Mormons, dude.
I was single when I was in the Dominican Republic. I did not do it. You want to know, at the beginning of mine and Annie's relationship, though, that was when I was in Costa Rica, right? So, like, we're FaceTiming, or whatever they called it back then. It was at the beginning of that. And I said, I told her, I said, we went down to the brothel last night. And she says, oh, did you try, And I'm like, dude, I'm in a relationship with you. What do you mean? She's like, but you're down there, you're in this place where you have all these different flavors. This is my partner, my female partner saying this to me.
Right.
And she said, you're an idiot. If I had one of those things, I'd try every flavor. That was straight up what she said to me. And, I don't know. She's a one of a kind.
Every flavor.
That's what she said. But you're right. I can't. I mean, whether it's right or wrong, it's just hard for me to ever negotiate doing that when I'm in the middle of something.
Well, like I said, I think it's just because you're a good guy. And the Mormon religion and practice of it may have some part of it, but I don't think you can say it's just because, I mean, really, especially at our age now, and really at any age, your morals are just kind of like what dude said in Big Trouble in Little China. He said, it's like dim sum. We take what we want and put the rest back. And that's kind of what it is. I mean, and so we take a little bit from what we learned from our mom and a little bit from what we learned from our dad. Maybe we had a fucking teacher that we liked a lot, so we take a little bit from them, a little bit from fucking organized religion for whatever that's worth. And,
how did that go again?
And then, we end up with the way we're fucking shaped and the way we act.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I get it's odd how, I mean, I quit going to church when I was 13, when I met you, incidentally, consequently. wonder if anything there was any cause and effect going on right there. But
Yeah.
I'm not blaming anybody for anything. But there was definitely a door that was opened up, and I believe that I walked through it with open eyes.
Yeah, I
sure.
may have opened the fucking door, but I didn't push it through, dude.
No. Like I said, I'm not blaming anybody for anything. But it really is odd how much residue from that time period still sort of like, and there's no doubt, like I'm not, when I had my first big relationship and in between that and my current one, I went a little wild there for a little while. And I think that's important sometimes in life. Sometimes you got, and I'm not going to put my fucking sex life on blast, but.
So it's weird. I'm trying to think, like, I mean, obviously the religion thing, they Sodom and Gomorrah, talking about that, you realize that there were whores. Prostitution was bad. But I don't think that my mom, like, I can't remember her ever talking to me about prostitution. And maybe it was because she didn't know how to broach that subject, or maybe it was because she figured, well, he can do whatever the fuck he wants. He earns his own money.
Where do you think that would come in at? Is that part of the birds and the bees conversation?
That's what I was saying. I don't know if she if she just didn't know how to broach it, or if she didn't think that it mattered because it would never come up. I don't know. Like, I've heard stories about, like, dads that took their sons to prostitutes, like,
for a first time,
to get rid of their virginity. Yeah. And that's
odd. Yeah,
fucking blows my mind.
Yeah,
I can't weird. Even imagine that. Like, if I actually had a kid, I can imagine, talking to him about sex. But not
unless you're like a gangster or something, not like if you're Tony Soprano's kid or something like that.
Even then, I think
he wouldn't have taken. No, you're right. He wouldn't have taken AJ. That's for sure. And I think that he knew that AJ would be competent in his own way. So my favorite book in the world is this book called Lamb, right? And it's a book written. The story is written by Jesus' best friend growing up with him. His name's Levi, but he goes by Biff, right? So in the time period from when, like, he knows he's the Messiah, like from Jump Street, but like, if I just can't imagine, like, what is a 6-year-old or a 7-year-old going to think of? You think your mom tells you the Messiah and God tells you the Messiah, like, so it's about that process, which I think is kind of a fun journey to kind of fuck around with. So they go on a journey to go find the 3 wise men, and when they get to the first town, Jesus, he's like, I don't think I could have sex. He's like, but I really want to know what sex feels like, right? So he gives all of his money to Biff, and Biff buys prostitutes, and Jesus is in the room next to him, and they start talking to each other, and the prostitute's like, you didn't ask for that when we paid for this. We don't get an audience here, son. You got to throw in a couple of extra shillings or something.
I've only read that twice, and it is a great book, by the way, but he ends up getting a fucking STD, and Jesus has to heal him, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
It's a fucking wonderful book.
It's hilarious.
And prostitutes are all, in all the different, because they start from Galilee area, right? And then they go all the way east. They go into Afghanistan and Pakistan and down into India.
Yeah, they go.
And prostitutes are everywhere.
Yeah.
Which is a fact. Like Brian said, it's been a huge part of global history. It's not something, and it's foolish for us to like try to pretend. Even as I say that I'm fucked in the head because of my Mormonism, I think that part of me trying to get over being fucked in my head because of my Mormonism is in saying these are things that we probably should embrace less hypocritically.
Well, and just because you're not going to partake doesn't mean that you can't acknowledge the existence of,
or be in favor of it.
And, say, let's do this. I'm not going to ever fucking smoke meth. But I do think meth should be legal.
Well, and we don't smoke weed anymore
No.
for years, and yeah, everybody want to go smoke weed, go do what you want to do, get some hash, some crackle or crack, the stuff that you heat up real fucking hot, and so much fucking THC that it fucking makes your eyes turn purple. If you want to do it, as my buddy Quang said when we were kids, if you want to do it, man, fucking do it.
Do it. I almost started talking about weed because burn victims who have, because pot smokers are fucking geniuses, you know. So these new wax things, the dabs, people are lighting themselves on fire doing them. And so these pot smokers end up in the hospital and they've got a lot of times like 3rd-degree burns and they're in a great deal of pain. But because they've been smoking this high potency weed for so long,
shatter, that was the word I was looking for.
That now painkillers do not help them get rid of the pain, which is something that doctors are now acknowledging, because for a long time they said, well, one doesn't have anything to do with the other, it's different receptors, all of this other stuff. And so they're kind of confused why it doesn't, but it doesn't. So I just wanted to mention that since
I think that if you take a fucking flame and you take your shatter and heat it up to where you smoke it and you give yourself a 3rd-degree burn, I think that you should have some pain at that point in time.
Well, we're not just talking about like a little bit on your hand. We're talking about them like
lighting themselves
on fire. Yeah.
You gotta. That's why I quit smoking weed, guys, because I just got stupid at some point in time, and I like to have a brain.
And apparently they forgot the stop, drop, and roll thing that they learned in school. They should have.
Maybe they stopped teaching that once they started giving everybody fucking awards and shit, you know?
No, everyone wins at field day.
Burn up.
Now go get yourself a hooker.
You're fucking douchebag. That's fucking funny. Go get yourself a hooker.
All right, so we're coming up on 45. On Wednesday, we are going to continue this wonderful conversation by introducing hookers in the media, and we're talking about like movies and television shows. Some of my favorites I think are Sin City, Night Shift, Dr. Detroit.
You have to talk about Pretty Woman, even though it's like the worst fucking hooker movie in the history of the world, and sends all the fucking wrong messages. We'll talk about that more. Did you ever see Leaving Las Vegas, dude?
Oh, great fucking flick. So depressing, dude.
It's pain. I watched it again a couple of days ago for this, and I hadn't watched it since the first time I watched it because Nicolas Cage is just really probably maybe one of his best roles. But it hurts to fucking watch that movie, dude.
So depressing, and it's depressing from her side too, dude, because Elizabeth Shue is so fucked up. Like, her life isn't anything grand to begin with, but she's so in love with this guy and she's trying to do everything for him, and he still just wants to fucking die. It's
a beautiful movie, like in an incredibly tragic way. So and really Elizabeth Shue's best performance ever. I mean, she come a long way from fucking Karate Kid, that's for sure.
What about Adventures in Babysitting,
Oh, yeah,
dude?
I forgot about that. That was fucking brilliant. Yeah. She actually had a bit role in Deconstructing Harry, which has a lot of good prostitute stuff in it. It's fucking hilarious and just disgusting in a total Woody Allen way.
Well, that's what I was going to say is there was another Woody Allen movie that they talk about hookers a lot. But, yeah, so anyway, we're going to talk about...
We'll talk about
movie hookers.
We'll talk about Cookie from Deconstructing Harry next time.
Yeah, so on Wednesday. And then on Friday, we're going to kind of continue the whole Times Square urban renewal thing and actually talk about urban renewal.
Or Maybe not urban renewal.
You want to call it gentrification?
No. I'm just, with the urban renewal is how it's sold, and then of course we'll talk about all the policies and the shit stuff that they do to everybody else to fucking fuck people over.
Right. So it's definitely urban renewal for like rich people. It helps them out a lot.
Just continue along the happiness, the joy that we spread.
All right, people. So we'll see you in a couple days when we talk about movies and hookers. And yeah.
Risky business. Later.
See
oh wait, no, you got to tell them 720-334 roll, bitches.
And also on Twitter and TikTok, I think.
And the email.
Oh yeah, shortbusdebateclub@yahoo.com. Plum. See you later.